I'll be the icebreaker. I just walked in. I'm a friend of your dad's, Allison. Why'd you guys do this? I mean, you know, it can't get any more personal, can't get any more painful. Was it cathartic? Was it what? I mean, it's probably a number of things, but why?
It started out, as I said earlier, it started out as a way of preserving the whole story for our boys. We wanted them to know the whole truth, what had happened in my life, in Allison's life, and in theirs, in their early years. And as we began to get more deeply into the story, and Allison was writing parts of the story that were, I mean, I was writing more of a linear story of my experience in starting in Glenwood Canyon and our meeting and all the grieving process that I went through. And Allison's stories come from a lot of different places, and we just kind of weave them together, and it became more and more clear to us that there's a great message of hope in our experiences together. And there's a lot of loss in this world that I think a lot of people aren't quite sure how to deal with it. They don't find any hope in their lives when these things happen. And we thought maybe if we told our story, it might bring them a measure of opportunity to move on. And just let them know that there are ways to return to joy.
Yeah, and you know, I think that especially when my brother committed suicide, we didn't have any roadmap. We just didn't know what to do or how to talk about it. And I think that was, for me, it felt so good to finally talk about it and to sort of find a way to begin a different kind of healing. And we live in a small valley where people really do nurture one another when tragedy happens. And the first thing they do is they call him when something happens. They'll because they know he's kind of experienced it all kinds of loss. So I feel like that's one of the things that, because there's sort of this thing around grief where many times we don't want to talk about it. It's like this thing it's like this elephant in the room. And so what I wanted to do was bring the elephant, out of the room, and to be able to have something to where if somebody's going through something, whether they want to talk about it with other people is their own business, but at least it's a place for them to go where they can find somebody who understands in the writing. I guess that would probably, but it's a very scary thing. When I had a panic attack. I called him the day before and I'm like, what have we done? The book's coming out tomorrow. What have we done? Why have we done this? What are we thinking? And I literally was completely kind of in a panic because I thought we bore our souls. I mean, and people, and I know people are going to judge it. I know people are going to think, I said, they're going to call me a wacko. They're going to think I'm a woo-woo wacko by this stuff. And so I really struggled and battled with this, but it was almost like I couldn't have done anything. I couldn't have not done it. It was an interesting process because I couldn't have not done it.
Well, you guys should be applauded for your courage to share.
Thank you.
Thanks very much. You asked if it had been cathartic, if there was a catharsis in part of why we wrote it, and for myself, I found that as I sat down to tell the story from the very beginning, I had to go back in my heart to the day, of the accident, to those moments. I had to just sort of relive them, and I would dissolve in tears as I started to write these things, but it didn't last long. And then I would lift out of that, and my experience really was one of joy, because I found myself back with Kathy and Tanner and Shay, my family, and as close to them as I had been in many years, and to experience again having them with me was a wonderful time. And so I would look forward to going into my office is where I was doing this writing on weekends. I couldn't seem to get it done anyplace else. And I was looking forward to these times to revisit with my family. So there was that kind of catharsis. It was a joyful one.
I read the article in the paper today
Uh-huh.
and was surprised and saddened by the reporter's comment that it sounded new age.
Yeah.
I think that's a sad comment on our culture, that we take true spirituality, which is what I heard,
Yeah.
and the intuitive nature that you spoke of, which I didn't know about you as a child,
Right.
but I've read a lot of Zener Henderson, and that I'm perfectly comfortable with that. And for that to be characterized as
Right.
new age means the guy had no idea.
Well, he hadn't read the book yet.
Well, no, but I don't care.
Yeah,
I mean,
no, I
it's,
know. It's true, but I think, I think when you talk about, it's interesting because for me, one of the reasons why I had a hard time with those kind of things when I was younger is because I thought it was, growing up in a Christian home, I thought it was the devil, so it is. I mean, I think there's a real, we do that. I think that's very common, and that's the other thing we're talking about that's hard when you put yourself out there, because we purposely try not to make it be where anybody coming from any religion could meet in the middle with it, regardless of what our own faith was, that anybody could read it and draw something from it. But you're right, because people just, that was his, he told me, he was really clear. He said, I have a real hard time, and I totally understand. I understand where it can be hard to understand. Yeah, thank you. Yeah.
I'm wondering if you have one or two singular experiences that stand out more in your memory than others?
Of experiences I've had? Yes.
That have been most meaningful, perhaps?
Well, interestingly, recently, when our economy was when we've been going through a lot of hard things in our world, I had a really strong experience where basically what came to me was that as hard as it is for what many people are going through, and including us and the changes we've had to make in our own life, that it was a cleansing, that there's a real cleansing one where people are really having to relook at their values and what they stand for. And while it's hard because it's easy to say that, but I'm not living in some town where I have no job and I don't have anything. So it's not that's a good thing, but that the general consensus of what is happening is there's a cleansing going on, that for many people they'll be drawn to their faith, they'll be drawn to the things that are important in their family, and that it's a real time that people are can do that. So that was a recent one. That's probably the most recent. Can you think of any that I've?
Kathy's helping you write the book.
Okay, well, that was when I started writing the book. What was interesting, he talked about writing the book because it was his story. I mean, really, the whole thing was, his story in that way, that it was started with his accident. And he wasn't writing it because he just couldn't find time to write. He just was so busy with his legal practice. So I would wake up either we wake up in the middle of the night, or many times it was as I was going to bed, I would get up and I would go to the computer and I would put my hands on the computer, and these stories would come out. And they, once again, were stories of his experiences with his family, where he had, one of them was going to Lake Powell, once again, things that they were, but it was all the stories that Kathy wanted him, she was trying to get him to write the book. And she just used me, and so I would do this, and I would push the send button, on that, and I would send it to him, and he would get there in the mornings, at 6 or 7 in the morning at work, and he would read these passages that she was just trying to get him to write. And so some of them ended up being for me, like things I was writing, but a lot of them were really things about him that she really wanted the story. She wanted this, and she really felt that this could really help people. And that's what I guess I also meant by we had no choice in writing. Like there was almost like once you start doing that, you almost realize you have no choice in writing the book. So that's probably the most, she really, I would say she's responsible for this book being written.